To be or not to be? That is the question we will answer today, my friends. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the prying fingers of children on your drivers, or to accept the losses by using your grill covers. Hey my friends, I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics. Before we continue and answer this question, please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like home theater and you like our channel and you like our content. And also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/audioholics. Welcome back, my friends. So I'd like to go over this topic more in thorough with you, more detail. We have an article on the site about speaker grills on or off. It's pretty technical. We get kind of technical on the editorial site. So I'm going to try to break this down and give you the definitive answer, whether or not it matters if you keep those speaker grills on or off. Well, a couple points I'd like to bring out. First of all, the grill cloth itself, if you look at a grill, the grill cloth itself, if it's very taut against the frame, it's not very lossy. You don't lose a lot. So it's not the grill cloth that's the problem. In most cases, speaker manufacturers are using pretty transparent grill cloth, so you're going to lose very little detail just from the actual grill itself, or the material itself, the fabric. The problem really is the frame, and this is where you can get in trouble with grills. If the frame causes diffraction, if the borders of the frame are too close to the speaker, to one of the drivers, usually the mid to the tweeter drivers, it can cause diffraction and put that sound out of phase. Now, if you look at the distance between the mid and tweet driver and the nearest surface of the grill, all the frequencies above about 1/2 the wavelength can be affected. So you could show, for example, if you look at, in our article, we have examples of how this is done with measurements. But let's just say the closest surface from a driver to the grill frame itself is about 4 inches. Half the wavelength of that is about 1.7 kilohertz. So you'll tend to see a dip in that range, sometimes a little higher depending on where the diffraction is occurring. So it's really the frame. And when you have these elaborate frames that have a lot of support beams on them, this one's actually pretty good. This is from my reference towers, the RBH 8Ts. And the tweeter itself is it's really flush up against here, so you don't get a lot of diffraction. I did measure some, but when you're looking at a speaker of this caliber, and hopefully you don't have too many children around, you probably don't want to use the grill itself. You want to keep it off. But this is a pretty decent grill. The other thing that affects the sound is the grill thickness or the mass. If you've got a grill that's really thick, like those old 1970s speakers, they're pretty atrocious. They can cause a lot of losses, sometimes even lower than that little guide that I gave you about the half wavelength. So you could lose some frequencies in the mid bass as well. Those get messy. And if you look at a speaker like even the new JBL L100, which is a great speaker, the redesign of it, but they go and use that funky waffle cone, waffle grill, because it's vintage and people like that vintage look. That is not a good grill in my opinion, my friends. If you're gonna buy a speaker like that was well engineered, the company JBL does a great job with driver transducers and they have all the latest technology with the waveguide and the tweeter. Take that stupid grill off, that orange grill. I'm sorry JBL, I love you guys, but that grill is just, in my opinion, hideous. I would lose those grills or just leave them on when you have kids around. So here's another point I'd like to make is about, it's really about how you're using your speakers. Are you going to be around where there's people that are going to be sticking their fingers in your drivers? Believe it or not, I've had that happen. I've had people come in my house, up to a speaker, look at the tweeter and stick their finger in it and put a dent. And you literally want to break someone's finger when they do that. So, I mean, it's better when you have a lot of guests over to put those grill covers back on and not even risk it. But there are some speaker designs that have a grill mesh already built into the driver. And I like that when they do that. Like, for example, on my reference speakers with the beryllium drivers, they have a little metal mesh around it. Sometimes those metal meshes are there as a dampening mechanism if the driver has any kind of resonances. And other times it's just there for protection. A speaker like Paradigm, the Persona series, they actually have a very specific pattern around their drivers on their mid-range and their tweeter. And that's part of the design of the driver, and that's used to kind of break up any type of beaming that the driver may incur. So in those cases, you don't want to mess with those grills. You want to leave those grills on. And anytime you're in doubt whether or not you should have a grill on or off, I would always consult with the manufacturer because they know their speakers best. But again, if you look at some of the examples in our article, we've done, various measurements of different speakers. We have an Outlaw speaker in there. We have a couple of Dayton speakers in there. You can see, depending on the design of the grill, the thickness of the grill, where the losses occur. But I'm going to tell you this much. Even some of the worst grills that we've seen still are, the losses you get from those grills is minuscule compared to putting the speaker in a bad placement. If you take, for example, a bookshelf speaker and shove it into an entertainment center, the boundary loading from that and the interference and the diffraction from putting it into a separate enclosure is going to cause more deleterious effects to frequency response than any grill cover, even that JBL waffle cone grill cover could incur. So I would tell you that yes, grill covers can make you lose fidelity depending on their design, but in practicality, speaker placement triumphs all of that. If you have bad speaker placement, or you're putting a speaker too close to a surface, or you have adjacent boundaries that are too close to that speaker and it's causing all sorts of diffraction, that's way more harmful than any grill cover or any loss from any mesh or any frame or anything like that is going to cause on your speaker. And statistically, I haven't seen any blind tests that have said this person saw fidelity loss when they had the grill cover on their speaker versus the grill cover being off. Now, I will tell you there are some psychological aspects to this as well. Personally, subjectively, I think speakers sound better with their grill covers off, just because I like to look at the drivers, and that's in your mind. When you see the cones moving, or you're just kind of sitting down and you're looking at those beautiful aluminum or beryllium cone drivers or whatever you have in your speakers, there's definitely something to the sight of it. Especially with lighting. If you get the lighting in your room right and you kind of shine it up towards those drivers, that actually gives you the illusion, and at least in my mind, and my wife has said this as well, you get the lighting right in the room and you see the grills off on the speakers and you see the drivers kind of reflecting that lighting. It's kind of a cool thing, and it makes you feel cool. It makes you feel pride of ownership that you have all these beautiful drivers in your speaker. So in that case, I'd say let those speakers go naked. Free the drivers or free the nip, whatever you want to say. So guys, I would tell you definitively that grill covers can make a difference, at least measurement wise, and you can see it in our examples. There are losses to be incurred depending on the grill frame and the distance for the drivers and the amount of diffraction. But in reality, the differences or the losses are pretty minuscule when you compare it to bad speaker placement or bad speaker setup or bad room acoustics. There's so many other factors to worry about than losing sleep over whether or not you should take your grill covers on or off. Now, personally, in my system, I leave the grill covers off of the front 3 speakers, but then I leave the grills on the surrounds. I've got, my in-wall speakers have mesh over it because I have fabric wrap around this room, which is acoustically treated. And I did measure in this case, because the mesh that I'm using is a little more lossy than speaker grill loss. So I did a little parametric equalization on my surround speakers and I bumped them up about a dB at 16 kilohertz to account for the loss. It's pretty minor, but I'm pretty anal retentive about this stuff. I want to make sure I have the best possible sound in my room. EQ always helps that. Same thing when people use perforated screens. There is a little bit loss to be incurred there as well, so you could always EQ that back. But you do have to watch for diffraction, friends. That's the real enemy of the situation here. It's not so much the loss through the fabric material itself, it's the diffraction caused by boundaries, by the grill cover, or by bad speaker placement. So I hope that answers your question. I hope you guys will think about this next time when you're setting up your speakers, not just to grill or not to grill, but get that speaker placement right. Comment down below. I'm kind of curious what you guys are using. Are you using your speakers with the grill covers on or off? I will tell you this much, there are some speakers, besides the Paradigm example, that are designed to work with grill covers on, like the Vandersteens, for example. So again, checking with your manufacturer is always prudent, something I always recommend to see what they tell you. But I'd like to see your comments down below. What speakers are you using? Are your speakers running naked or not? Do you have the grills on or off? Do you have any horror stories you want to share with us about kids prying into your drivers and putting dents in the cones and all that stuff? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear more about that. Give us some ideas of other topics you'd like us to cover. And until next time, my friends, Keep listening.